Welcome, everybody, back to KC Happy Hour. This is episode number 82 as we inch closer to that 100th episode. We've got a cool show tonight with a couple different segments we'll get into. Ryan Norberg's in the green room right now. He's going to join us right after this news segment to talk a little bit and catch up with him. We haven't had him on in a little while. We'll be moving into a later segment around 30 past the hour that'll have Keith Raffa and Mike Doty talking about karting in the Northeast, the newly formed NorthEast Karting Challenge, which we teased back at the end of 2022, just had their first race a couple weeks ago. There's a lot of racing going on, even though there's not anything that we're live covering last week or this week. So we'll get into a bit of that. And there's a bit of news fallout that kind of came at the end of last week and some more stuff at the front of this week. So joining me here this week, Taylor Burris, as always. Taylor, obviously we had a handful of stuff come out. So I know you've got a handful of the news already that you can kind of lead us into. What do you have so far?
Well, a lot of things have been happening in the world of karting, and first and foremost we have to talk about is where Route 66, CKNA, the Ohio Sprint Series, Anderson Mayor's Cup, Rock Cup, the Rock Island GP, they've all announced efforts to work together to improve some special driving standards as well as also for safety and fun. It's a way where we're starting to see more karting series start to unify a little bit more. And this was a big topic that even me and you were talking a little bit about in this way. And some people are happy about it. Some people are still cautiously optimistic on this matter. I mean, what are your thoughts when it comes to this special improvement, I would have to say, or where these series are merging together?
Yeah. So it's definitely not a new topic. I think that's a very easy crutch. I think there's no question that with us covering streams with WK Daytona being streamed, CKNA being streamed the last couple of years, Supernats years before, and with um, a pretty quick turnover, these conversations sometimes happen, and then series fade away, series come back, and they hit the same root issue once they get to a certain size. So it's not like the driving standards or anything new of being at a level that people aren't happy with. And to be honest, it's not that the race directors aren't making penalty calls. There are officials there, and there's more officials, more paid officials than ever before. And there's more officials on the racetrack at each event. It seems even at lower levels, at the regional series, at smaller entry count series, at smaller entry fee series, like a CKNA entry fee is half the entry of a SCUSA Pro Tour or USPKS normally. It's getting a little bit closer, but especially their regional stuff, they still have more staff than just one single guy looking over the whole deal. So at least the cool part is over the last few years, it seems like the number of different series hasn't really changed. The owners of the different series have maybe changed slightly, or one or two new guys have entered the picture, but it's been pretty stable in the States. And once everyone, I think, gets comfortable, then they finally kind of get over and a little bit of ego and be like, all right, I'm not the only show in town. Let me talk to the other guys, all the teams, all the floating mechanics, all the families and adults that want to go race everything, race at a bunch of different programs. It's very rare you see guys just run one specific series for 4 events on the year. So first thing that they've been doing over the last few years, better and better each year, is opening lines of communication on scheduling. That's been going on for a while. And then in the last year and a half, really, there's been more and more talks of using those same already kind of built up relationships and communication to say, hey, you've got a driving standard issue. I've got a driving standard issue. It's the same for both series because it's a driver thing that they're trying to deal with. So last, couple weeks ago, NAKL gets announced. That had been in the works for a while. Back in the summer after the SCUSA Utah incident, which was the second kind of major incident we'd seen in kind of our era of 2 years of covering the sport. There was the joint statement that if you're banned from one, banned from all. There's been a couple guys banned in that regard. Then the NAKL, and now something like this for the series that aren't involved, right? When the NAKL came out, they said there'd be room for a third party to join it. And Rock wasn't on it, and that's kind of been the big three for the last couple of years. Stars is getting closer and closer to being in that same conversation at that same level. They weren't in it, but this is a bunch of regional groups, the CKNA group, of course, and then Rock, all saying, "Hey, we're talking, we're working on the same problem." And the negative comments really are because, like I said, that it's not a new issue, and it's one thing to just say that there's a problem, right? So it's quick to shoot it down because everyone's been conditioned like, all right, we've heard this story, we've seen this song and dance before, we've heard the preaches at the drivers' meetings, we maybe have seen one or two press releases similar, or guys come out and say when they launch a series, they want it to be safe, they want to be harsh on penalties, um, and not a lot's changed. So that's where the negative stuff comes in, which is a little bit unfair if it's isolated. It's not like these guys aren't already trying. They're just saying, hey, now we're talking to each other. We're going to see if we can come up with ideas to collaboratively try. So before it gets shot down, everyone's just got to be a little bit patient and give it time. Again, thinking back on the timeline, SCUSA and USPKS have been in talks for the last few years, and last year finally joined them up. And then you go back from June of last year until March of this year when the NAKL comes together. So that's a long time frame before a foolproof solution was really put in place beyond a very simple, if you ban a guy, I'll ban him too because he's probably a problem character. So now there's actually something in place, but we're talking 3/4 of a year to get that together. I don't think these guys will take that long. My guess of how everything will work is they'll, kind of start trading penalty sheets, talking, about more problematic drivers or problematic incidents and how they handle them. The big thing is standardizing how they call wrecks, because that's been a root issue in our sport for a while, that there's no race director training, and everyone can kind of come in from any other kind of discipline and call a race how they want. Like an umpire will sometimes have a bigger strike zone or a smaller strike zone. And part of that's going to be human differences. But some of it we need to put what we believe is right aside and say, okay, this is what the majority want to do, and this is where the center line is going to be. I might be on the right, you might be on the left, and we just both need to compromise on our personal views and say we're going to call the race this way. So that's another thing that they've got to do that could lead to eventually doing something similar to a point system. I don't think that's what they want to do, especially for the regional series. Every dollar gets looked at a lot harsher, so a license tracking system may be out of the question. But any solutions, this is just saying that they're starting, and you can't write it off. It's better than them saying nothing and not talking to each other and just talking to people in person. So that's cool. Does it mean anything yet? No, but it is an initiative and a good sign for things to come if more comes from it. But if we fast forward to a year and nothing's happening and it's gone silent, then I think you can be a little bit negative about it, maybe even 6 months, but you got to give them time.
Here's a point then that we need to maybe discuss maybe in a future episode, or we can discuss right here, where you're talking about how there is no training for those who are doing the race officiating. Why do you think that's the issue? Why there is no proper training? Yes, series is different, but why is there no official training for race officiating in the karting industry?
I think when in the past one series has become king of the hill and had that opportunity, it's only lasted a couple of years, and it's a lot of effort to stay at the biggest total turnout series as a whole. So because we don't have an overall sanctioning body, and we haven't for 30-40 years, really the first split was back with IKF and WK in the 70s. So there's never been an overarching sanctioning body where that's their main focus. Standardizing, doing stuff good for the sport, that's great in theory. It's good branding. It's good marketing. If you're a series like Stars that has that NKA link where they make money by having insurance, and that's their main business is the NKA insurance, that they do pit passes at the club level, they have a bottom line initiative that's also, helps kind of make it more in their headlights to do stuff like that. But we've seen guys just rotate as the biggest series every 3 to 5 years on all fronts. Every engine platform, every region kind of goes through rebirth. That'll be one thing we'll talk about later in the show is the Northeast, right? I mean, they couldn't standardize because the last few years they've been nothing. There was the Gear Up F series that was big for the last few years, and then that's kind of dialed back as the owner bought a racetrack, and the series was up and down. So anytime someone's had that opportunity, it's been a small window of opportunity. And on top of that, it's not, it's hard enough to manage the events as a whole. So that's, I think, the reason why you have it. And we don't have a sanctioning body. I don't see that ever coming to fruition here. It's a great pipe dream, but I don't see it happening. But that's why you don't see the race director training. With these guys linking up, there's a potential for that, but it's going to be in an American, non-traditional way like we always do things. It won't be like any other country.
Well, and if you honestly think about it, to this, even in the professional series, they have issues with race officiating training. I mean, you think about it, they bring in, drivers which is a good start, but also not really training their way in with the race officiating, where there's so many different calls as these events progress forward. But we'll see how this works out. Hopefully it does work out in the future where it helps improve the driving standards and the safety for these series. So only time will tell. But speaking of another series that we'll be getting ready to broadcast at the end of the month, the USPKS decides to make a big move where it's going to be only the KZ engine package in Pro Shifter. And this is, I think, has to do a lot with how things happen regarding this last round at Orlando, pretty much the month of Orlando, Xander, where they decided to no longer utilize non-IAME KZ engines.
So it's not IAME KZ. It's the IAME 175. So IAME has a KZ screamer that is used. It follows the KZ format. You had two different types of engines. This came out Thursday, right after our show. Stars had an announcement Tuesday saying they were going to allow the engine under 2021 specs. You've got a much different BOP. When you've got KZ, that they're all built to the same kind of template, and then they have room to grow within it, but it's a standardized class formula. This was taking an engine that has a little different power band, and there's no question it was a knee-jerk reaction or not. It was a reaction to the difference that and the whooping that Billy put on him on Sunday at Orlando. Now, Billy went in really good depth last week of the little bits of differences they did with the few changes they made in late 2022 to try and make that engine a little more competitive. And he hit it right, and the KZ guys didn't. But in USPKS's case, Billy wasn't there. The Musgrave group's been really one of the few groups that's run the 175 still on the national circuit in the Pro Tour. In the Stars series, they do have a mix of both, so it makes sense the way they did it. With PKS, Billy's based out in California. He mentioned in the press conference he was going to look at getting over to Houston and maybe running some of their events in Pro Shifter, especially that purse makes it a little easier on the gas money for that team to come out, and they're trying to develop their mini and their KA stuff. But, yeah, so PKS has said KZ only. The big benefit for them, obviously, for Danny as well, it's going to be two engines checked in. So if Danny Formal runs into that same issue, or any driver blowing up an engine on the stand right before the race, they can go to the other engine. They can switch at any point throughout the weekend. Both get checked in. It's not like they're stuck to one. And that's also standard for that formula because it is a little more Formula 1S that they're running stuff a little more on the leaner edge. And, you're trying to compete against other manufacturers where an X30, an IME 175, a Rock engine, a Rotax engine, they're built to last and it's Spec. So you don't see that detonation nearly as much. Very rare that you do. So, and speaking of the series stuff, we'll go through the last bit of the news that we have here relatively quickly to kind of keep the show moving before we get tied up on a lot. So there was a lot of sellouts on class entries, which is good. We're talking on stuff with the sport where you've got stuff that we harp about all the time about driving standards, officiating, whatnot, the stuff that's going on. It's cool to see they're all talking about it. What's even cooler is that in a lot of divisions of the sport, both here and abroad, we're seeing some really, really good pre-entry numbers. This weekend, CKNA South, or not CKNA South, CKNA Northeast, really their first standalone event, their really first event. They counted points from CKNA Charlotte, which was one of their 3 Crown Jewel Nationals. That's a smart idea. Very WK-esque back in the 2000s and 90s where they would have a regional series intertwined with the national. That's cool. They've got 100 entries for their first standalone event up at New York at Oakland Valley, 23 in the junior class. The senior stuff's pretty decent. The cadets a little bit light, but that's cool. Granted, they're benefiting a little bit. They've made a presence up in Canada. They've got some of the Southeastern guys that are good, that had good weekends at Charlotte that'll follow it up. So kudos to them. USPKS sold out in Mini Swift very quickly. In fact, some guys that were good in Orlando are going to have to sit on the sidelines for this one. Micro Swift is only, I think, about it's about 10 entries away. It's at like 33, 34, 35. It'll sell out at 46 probably by the time we get to that event as well. Their entries look good. The event here shown the FIA International Masters Super Cup. So they added KZ2 Masters. The first time they've ever had a Masters class, I think, was last year or the year before. Sold out in 48 hours. 72 entries for KZ2 Masters at the World Championships coming up in Germany. That's all the way in like September when the KZ World Championships are. So that's cool. It's different, way different than they've gone in any direction before. But it makes sense because that's the most expensive, some of the most expensive racing you can do, from the travel costs to running with professional factory teams to running an open formula class. That guys over the age of 30 are going to have more disposable income to be able to run it. And you don't see as many kids go over and run the shifter stuff in Europe, probably even less than over here because they get pushed straight to formula cars on the FIA ladder if you see them at the international stage very early on, usually after the senior class. So kudos to them. Cool stuff to see. The Stars Championship Series sold out of KA Stars at 60 entries just a couple days ago. So that's badass. Their format's actually pretty cool because no one really ends up with uneven tire wear, and they'll run the 2 heats Friday night, split heats where the field will get cut in half. And then what they'll do is they'll go to the pre-final Sunday morning. The top 30 will automatically lock into the show. If you wreck out of the top 30 pre-final, you're going to start 30th. So you can't wreck out of the pre-final and miss the main event. Whereas in a lot of events where they have stuff like this, it's like heats, re-rack everyone. That's just your starting position for the pre-final. You have a bad pre-final, you miss the main. It's not the case there. The 30 lock in. Then you have the bottom half pre-final, top 10 set the 31st to 40th spots. So cool for them. And then the Route 66 Sprint Series is doing something really, really cool where they're doing kind of state-by-state races. So they've got 2 events in Indiana, 2 events in Wisconsin, and to try and entice some guys to run at least both of those events in their state at tracks that are only 2 hours apart. In the case of Whiteland and Newcastle, you're talking an hour apart. They're going to have individual state championships, and they're going to put some cash money up for 206 and for KA Senior. So it's a cool, neat idea. We talked to Chris Kardashian before. He's got some really off-the-wall ideas with that series. That's really cool to be thinking, even not even at the guys that are at its level yet, but how to ease that transition. So it's basically going to have, in the same way we've talked nationally of like, an east or a west or a north and a south. That's the same concept they're doing here. So that's cool to see with them. And with all that news kind of out of the way, we'll go ahead and bring Ryan out of the green room and talk to you more about what we've got from racing on the racetrack here this year, because a big storyline that we were texting a little bit earlier today, Ryan, that I think, again, you'll be able to add some light to is this year especially, the tire compounds we've run, they're supposedly not changed that much, but the whole conditions during race weekend are almost the polar opposite of what it was 5 years ago, where we go faster through a race weekend. We get more grip laid down. Now it seems like everyone's been saying the opposite. The track just gets worse.
Yeah, I think it's more recently. I would say, last year, at the beginning of last year, I think everybody started to kind of understand that the tracks aren't really getting grippy as the weekend goes on. They're kind of getting like, I can't think of the word. What was the word I told you earlier today? We were texting about it.
I'll have to look back on it here. Let's see.
But they're getting like a shine to them. They're getting
polished. That's
polished.
What you
there
said.
You go.
Polished. There you go.
Yeah, they're getting polished, and it's really strange. I mean, I think ever since they changed the compound to the, I don't know, whatever they did with the CIK regulations when they switched, I think that was a moment where everybody realized like the rubber doesn't really come down. But now I would say more recently, it's not that it's not even coming down. It's picking up rubber. And it's kind of strange. I mean, after the Rock weekend, I think the LeVantos don't have the same problem that the MGs do. They still definitely don't put it down like they used to. But the LeVantos kind of laid down a little base level of rubber. And after that Rock weekend, I remember going into to SCUSA, and we were running like 52 7s, 52 8s pretty consistently. And then by the end of the week, we were in the high 53s, 54s. You do a new tire run and you're at a 53.8. It's like that's crazy, and so and I noticed it a little bit last year. We noticed it kind of in Homestead, and I remember I was talking to Joe Turney about it a little bit. He said even in Europe, the tracks aren't really putting down rubber like they used to. I was talking to him about the comparisons, and he's like, there's tracks that are those old tracks that have built-in rubber from 100 years of karting. He's like, but all the newer tracks are similar to the ones in the States. They're not really gripping up like they used to. They're just kind of polishing off. And at the beginning of the week is your fastest time. And as the week goes on, you're starting to get slower.
And you think a part of that is that they had to change the tire a little bit for the FIA regs? Like, in years past, it was, I think, Vega the last couple of years that the FIA was using before the MG deal. But I mean, even that tire seemed like it was laying down rubber. So do you think that's the FIA changes? Is it going green? Is it more supply chain stuff?
I mean, I can't tell you exactly. I know that, as much as, the tire compounds, they're set for the year or whatever, when they do it, they do make changes to the tires. We've seen it where MG was having issues with the KZs. I think when they first launched the tire, and they were just obliterating the rears. And so they had to change them. It's not like it's the same batch. So the tires got different, right? And maybe it's just a small change that's still within the regulations, but they do kind of change them over time. And we even see it with the LeVantos, they change, right? There's different batches that come in and they're a little bit different. I don't know exactly why, but definitely I would say from like 2020 on, it's been getting to the point where you're not seeing the track evolve like you used to. And I think for sure it's going to change driving styles. I mean, for sure, my driving style really excels in high grip racetracks, and it doesn't do so good with low grip stuff. And same with chassis. I think you're going to see chassis manufacturers start to change stuff around tracks being a lot more green than they used to. I mean, most times you're normally, the standard kart is pretty well set up for a grippy racetrack, and now it's kind of like the opposite, that like the standard kart is set up for a grippy track and it's going to be fast, when you get there. But then as the weekend goes on, you're going to have to start changing.
So is it like, and you mentioned like, the rubber going down polish, we're getting slower over the weekend. So was there like a slow transition, it felt like, from, let's say, that 2017, 2018 era where, we'd go to Newcastle, you'd stick your foot in the rubber and it'd rip your shoe off, so the track would go from green in the center to super grippy. And then, was there like a point where it was just green all the way through? And then now, because I mean, now we're going so much slower by the end of the weekend sometimes. Is it getting worse? Are we losing grip over the weekend, or is it just staying green?
So I think it was, so I would say 2020 at that SCUSA Summer Slam or whatever that was, where it was
Slam.
It was way too many races in one weekend.
Yeah.
That was a very noticeable amount of time that you could see that the tracks were getting polished. And you can actually, like, it's like polishing. When you go up to the racetrack, there's like a sheen, there's a shine on the asphalt, and you can notice it pretty obviously when you go out there and look. When the sun's hitting it, there's a shine to the racetrack. It's crazy. And I remember in 2020 going out and walking the racetrack, because I'm normally fast in Newcastle and I was just not that year. And I would walk on the racetrack. I'm like, there is like my foot sliding. And so I think you really notice it at racetracks where you're doing back-to-backs, because you have a group that comes like the week before or whatever, they kind of clean the racetrack off. And, normally you see that evolution. The track's dirty in the beginning of the week, and then it gets cleaned off. So then it picks up some time. And then by the end of the week, it starts to fall off again. And so the ones where you're doing back-to-backs at a racetrack, like a USPS followed by a SCUSA or something like that, the track's already been cleaned off for that first group. And so when the second one comes in, it's like they start off and that's the fastest you're going to be. And then pretty much from there on, it just slows down. And it was the same thing for the Rock. It's the same thing for SCUSA. It was like the fastest you was Monday, because the track was already clean, because there's been hundreds of go-karts driving around it, and there's no real evolution after that. And then everything after that's just slower. And it's really interesting. And it's the same. I mean, I always thought it was just kind of a US thing. But then, talking to some of the Europeans as well, they're like, it's the same thing over there. The tracks just really aren't putting down rubber like they used to. And I think that's going to be a major change in the karting world. I mean, a lot of your driving style is surrounded around rubber, there's a lot of stuff I do at the beginning of the week that I just don't change, because I'm like, oh, this is wrong now. But, give it 2 days with the rubber picks up and this is the right line. And now it's like, oh, wow. Like my line at the beginning of the week was better, and now I've got to change it quite a bit. And so, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think you'll probably start seeing manufacturers adjust stuff to it as well and make their karts, faster for green conditions, basically.
And so, like, comparing green conditions from, let's say, like Orlando, over the last few weeks, where does that rank in? I don't know. Was it really eerily similar to like what the Supernats track was from Thursday on once it got cleaned, or was it still almost different being a permanent racetrack?
It's different being a permanent racetrack, I think. But to be honest, it wasn't like crazy different. And that's what's strange, is like you go to Supernats, and obviously, like I said, you have the track evolution where it gets cleaned off. But even at like Supernats, I remember specifically like 2018, 2019, you're going out for the Sunday final and the kart's just bucking through the corner. There's so much rubber, especially, you know, in that front section right in front of the grandstands. That, I don't know if it's just because the pavement's smoother or there's just a different asphalt. That section normally gets like a ton of grip. And it really picks up through there. And you'd get into that first corner and you'd hop and you'd buck, and it had grip. And you could tell, like, as the week went on, and everybody knew it was like Sunday's basically you kind of throw everything out you were doing prior, because Sunday the track just gets so much better because so many sets of new tires, the rubber's just getting laid down so much on Sunday. And you know, these past couple Supernats really haven't seen that same evolution on Sunday. But even like Orlando, like you're saying, like Orlando by Saturday, Sunday was around the same grip level that Supernats was on Sunday. Like it's what it seems like is there's a limit to the amount of grip that can get laid down. And it doesn't matter if you're at a street track or wherever you are, that's it. And you're not going to go any faster than that. Once you've done once there's been, I don't know, 3,000 laps around the racetrack, it's going to be at this level, and that's going to be it for the rest of the weekend. You're not going to go any faster.
So I remember talking to you back at the Summerfest and about that this kind of exact deal of like the track wasn't taking a lot of rubber. And initially then we were thinking, okay, well, you know, the big differentiator from, let's say, like a driver at their home track, but that's only run local races, knows a line that is great on a green racetrack that's never really had a lot of rubber laid down. And then typically you'd see that guy kind of sifted down the order by the time the weekend would rubber up. So with the way that the Orlando, week progressed on it, is that where we're at? Where like what you can do Wednesday, what you would do on any given week, the line was similar for you. I mean, you coach there all the time. You've got more laps around there than any of the guys we have on the national tour. I mean, was there anything you had to do different, or was it just kind of playing the environment conditions like heat and sun and clouds and stuff like that?
There definitely was. I mean, I was struggling quite a bit because even to me, the track had gone so far past what I am used to, So like, for example, like here, I have a piece of paper right here. I'll show you.
All right.
I'm an artist here.
Yeah.
So, you have just a regular corner, normally you're going through the corner when the rubber's in and it's like in this area, you come in a lot shallower, you get on the gas, probably like over there, you're accelerating late off the corner. When the this isn't there, you end up having to come up quite a bit more, and you're rotating the kart more in this area. And then you're on the throttle, like a lot more towards the center of the corner and kind of driving off. And so, yeah, you do have to change your line quite a bit. And that changes the setup quite a bit as well, and your driving style. Like I'm definitely one of the guys that likes the first one. Like I like driving it hard, getting on the gas late, and letting the kart settle itself out on the exit of the corner. Where a lot of the other drivers that, like you're talking about, that don't normally race in hard, like in a lot of rubber racetracks, they set up a lot more on the entries. They get the kart rotated a lot more early, and they're on the gas a lot sooner. It's kind of like the KA driving style a little bit. And that definitely helped quite a bit going into, Saturday, Sunday in Orlando. And that was something like that's why I felt like I was struggling quite a bit. I think we missed a little bit on the setup, but as well, like I wasn't used to that. Even on the days that I'm coaching and practicing down there, I'm driving a much different line around the racetrack. And it was like, this track was significantly worse than even the days that I'd been there just coaching, and there's rentals and rentals and rentals, and I go out there and coach, and the track's not even that bad. So it was surprising. I think it was more noticeable just because of how many go-karts were going around that racetrack, and how it was seemingly like just kept polishing and polishing and polishing the racetrack, where normally, it's one weekend, so it doesn't get that bad. But yeah, you do 3 weekends around it. It's definitely going to be pretty noticeable.
So, I mean, seeing the racing there, this I feel like everyone that's going to kind of run the regular season, whether that's USPKS or SCUSA, has at least made one stateside start here in X30 where you've run against them, right? Joe's had a couple. Duke Mejian was back. Keeble's going to come back for more. And then the rest of our normal American guys that started in the winter series. From a racing perspective, with the line changing, do you think that changes anything different, right? Because if you think about it, I mean, just looking off your line that you drew on your pad, if you're having a higher rubber racetrack where you can run a little bit narrow, run in a little bit deeper, you can defend a little bit easier without losing as much on exit. Whereas if you're having to run a wider entry, do a lot more rotation at the beginning, and try to get the power down a lot sooner, in general, would it? I would imagine it would stack the packs up more, and make it harder to kind of defend and hold a spot where the leader could get away if you're blocking for second. But at the same time, for the leader, you lose a lot more time defending. Did you notice anything like that racing Orlando too?
100%. I wish I knew that question beforehand, because I would have brought some visual aids. But there's something that Joe's really good at. Morgado does well. Garrison does well. And what's the Sodi kid's first name? I keep forgetting it.
Harley.
I keep wanting to call him Henry. Harley did, to me, kind of that race. It just didn't succeed. It succeeded in knocking me out. But the thing is when the track's green like that, obviously the braking zones become a little bit longer. And because you're turning in so much later, you have to slow the cart down more a lot sooner in the corner. And so when we're going Homestead clockwise, when you're going to the back hairpin, which normally turn 4, right there, Austin and Joe both, you're already in the braking zone, and they still have enough time that you're already in the braking zone. They can pull out after they've already started braking. And so there's moments where that corner, especially, I think it was Austin and Joe both kind of got me there really late, because we're having to slow down so much on the entry of the corner. Same thing in turn 1, going the opposite direction in Homestead. Same thing. You're in the braking zone, and then it's like right last second when you're already in the corner, they can get you. Morgado does it really well as well. It happened going onto the last corner onto the straightaway right through there. We have to set up so much. It's easy to throw a pass in there last second, because you're anticipating that guy over slowing on the entry or slowing up a little bit more to get that extra rotation out of the cart. Same thing at the end of that long hairpin. That long straightaway next to the junkyard in Orlando, that same thing happens quite a bit. And I think that's where Henry kind of misjudged a little bit. I mean, not Henry.
Harley.
Harley, yeah. He got a little bit late, and then we kind of made contact. But it's that same play. They all do it because you're anticipating the guys overslowing it on the apex. Now, if they don't overslow it on the apex and everybody's braking late because everybody's anticipating it early in the race, you're going to have an issue like we did where you just beat side pods together. But it does open up a lot more opportunities. Again, it's something that I'm not normally used to. I'm not normally used to passing people. You've already started braking, and then you make the move.
Yeah.
And so it's something that I'm definitely looking at that. And I've been analyzing a lot of the stuff that I've been doing earlier in this year. And that's one of the areas that I feel like I could have some significant improvement is after I've already slowed down for the corner, you're still not, crossing out that passing zone. That's the thing, is it's like normally when you start braking for the corner, it's like, okay, this corner's done. I'm not going to make the pass. Let's move on to the next one. And now it's like, no, we're braking for the corner. We still haven't turned in. This is still an option. And I've got to be ready to go like on the trigger, make it happen in like after we've started braking. So it's definitely changing up the racing quite a bit. Like that's what I'm saying is like it's changing how people are driving. It's going to change setups. It's going to change a lot of things long term if it doesn't go back, which I don't see it really going back to what it was, back in the day. I mean, everybody talked, when I was growing up in 2014 or whatever, 15, when I was like, dang, this is a lot of rubber. And everybody before that was like, dude, you don't know rubber. Rubber back in the day was way more than this was. And now I'm looking back at 2014 and being like, that was the golden days of rubber. And now we're, it's just crazy. I don't think it's ever going to get to that point.
I think it's cool though, because like you look back at, I guess it's a little bit different, but you look back at guys in the 90s, right, with Formula Super A and stuff like that, and then you go even further back to the 80s and 70s, and the amount of slide because the tires were so much harder in the 70s and 80s. I mean, it's almost like it comes a little bit full circle just by the way, this rubber is going away. That rubber in the 2000s was probably peak era, right, with the ICA stuff, with ICC. 2010 still heavy but not as heavy, and then now we're like back where the karts aren't like on a slot car track, but I noticed those passes too looking on the stream, right? They look really slick because again, it's like it definitely just seems like it's more heads up. You're not committed to passing a guy out of the previous corner. You've got to be thinking mentally, like you said, having that door open both to get by a guy and then also like making sure that you don't get past with the guy behind you, because you could look back, think you're clear, and then still get stuff because the zone's longer, the turn-in points later.
But it's a much harder pass to adjust to. That's the thing. Is like for me, I'm learning a lot this year because this is going to come off wrong, but I didn't do a lot of racing last year. So there's a lot that I'm kind of like getting back in the hustle of the racing I'm catching up on. And normally my game plan was like, okay, somebody's the inside of you, back out, get it back in. But when they're making these passes as late as they are, it's so hard to like get out of the way for that because you're already there. Like they're not making contact, right? It's not a dirty pass. It's just really late. And so it's super difficult to do what I normally do, where it's like, okay, get out of that and then get your momentum back going again, because it stops your momentum so much. And it really upsets the go-kart. And so you're just stuck in this spot where, you're just playing, you're just really like messing up your runs off the corners. And so, I mean, it is a challenge to adjust to say the least.
Do you think that's going to, as a whole, tighten the whole field up a little bit by being new this year, right? Like it almost seems like it's the opposite when something new comes out for an engine or a tire. Someone gets the hang of it first, and then it's a breakaway. But right now, for all the drivers, everyone's kind of figuring out at the same rate. Everyone's still going to test probably as much, drive as much, race as much as each other. So it's almost like resetting the plane a bit. Is that why we're seeing a little more parity too up front beyond the natural evolution of just competition?
I mean, I think it's both. I think I've always said that like a stiffer tire normally evens out the field quite a bit. I've always believed in that. I think the softer the tire, if you're a good driver, you can really excel in those conditions. Like for example, like when I'm racing with the general people, my levels, I'm like, I got to be 0.3 faster than this person. And normally when the track's really rubbered up, I'll be 3-4 tenths faster than that person. And I know, okay, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. That's like my gauge, the track's grippy, whatever. But when the track's not grippy, like those guys, you can't get those 0.3 on the guys. It's impossible. And it's one of those things that it does bring the competition closer. And now I'm not saying these tires are harder, but obviously you're not putting down the grip. It's a lot harder to carry speed through the corner. So yeah, it does. I think it does stack the field up quite a bit because it's a different talent. It's a different driving style. I mean, like I was saying, it's not about carrying speed. It's not about, trying to maximize everything that you can on the entry as much as it is with a softer tire. It's a little bit different. It's a different attack that you have to the corner. So yeah, I mean, I think it is. And then also, I mean, the competition is just way higher than it ever has been. I mean, I was talking to David Serra actually about it. And I was telling him, I'm like, yeah, man, like growing up, I watched you, I watched Cooper, I watched Neri, I watched Askew, I watched all you guys, Eastwood, like just go down the list. Lennox, like just all these killer drivers at the Florida Winter Tour. And I'm like, I was like, if I could race in any era, it would be that one. I'm like, that was just a stacked field. And he was like, dude, he's like, you don't understand. He's like, this field that you have right here, he's like, this is as stacked as that was ever. He's like, this is just a stacked field as well. And he's like, and then I realized, I was like, oh yeah, it is like, this is a pretty heavy field. You got 3 factory drivers out there. You got a couple paid drivers in the US. Like it is really stacked. And so I think the tires mixed with that is definitely the reason why you're seeing so many drivers, so tight. And I think Joe has a great understanding of it and a good handle on it. And just his driving style definitely suits that style a little bit better, I would say.
So last question before we let you go. Speaking on that style, and you touched on it, just almost like hinted at it for you and Harley getting together in that Sunday final. What was your take out of that from your perspective? How do you rate that just coming together racing, and how do you look at it?
So objectively, not me, I should have passed Morgado. So going down the straightaway, I mean, the rule of racing is you pass, you get passed. I was going down the straightaway. Morgado was under pressure by me. We were going into the corner, and he kind of pulled a little bit on the straightaway, and he kind of signaled, he's like, let's work together a little bit. And in my head, I was like, I should go, but right now I wanted to not let the leaders get away. And I didn't feel super quick. So I was like, okay, I need to just kind of play my cards right. Then I got passed. My opinion, the pass is a little bit late. Like if you're ever driving over the curb to make the pass happen, and then you like side pod on the exit, like obviously it was a bit late. It was the same one of those things where I was like, ours already in the corner. So then the side pod, are just hitting side pods. And then at that point, it's like, I didn't really have anywhere else to go. He didn't run me into the wall. I had to go out there. But I don't know, if you're a good driver, you have responsibility and everything. And so it was my fault. It's not, the crash wasn't my fault, but not going on Morgado was what gave him the ability to pass me, which then ran me off the racetrack and then broke my chain.
And objectively, one last thing onto that. I said that was the last thing, but building off it, that kid comes over, first race. He's a young kid, very established kid, right? He's running KZ for Beer Lard a little bit. And then this year, I think they're going to have him do some stuff, hopefully with the Doty KZ team too, as well as coming here. But it's his first race here. You're feeling him out. Does that move come out and you're like, all right, like I know he's going to run me off if I try to do that again? Like, does it change the way that you view him doing that, or just seeing him through the weekend? Was there anything that was like, okay, I need to respect this guy like I respect Joe, respect Mateus, so on?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's not like a respect thing. It's a speed thing, right? So if you're up front, you have to race everybody up front with the same level of respect because they're there. So, if you run somebody off, they're going to be there to run you back off. So you have to be careful about that. But I would say that, he is young, and I should have known some of the decisions I think were a bit he wanted to prove himself kind of stuff. Like he wanted to get up there. He wanted to win. Like even watching his race on Sunday, I think, after I crashed out, I'm just watching it. I think he definitely was the kart to win the race. And he got caught up trying to do too much too quick. And that kind of hurt him. And he should have he should have been the guy to win. And then you see like Morgado on the other end, mature, he's been there before. He was able to get a big lead, not necessarily even being the fastest car. So, yeah, I think, I don't have anything against him. It's racing. So, we'll go into the next one. He's going to be in Houston, which, I saw on the entry list. So that's kind of cool. I'm happy to have him here. Happy to have more guys like that racing. But, definitely he's young. So, you got to lose some before you win some. So, hopefully I can win some here soon.
Yeah, about that time, right? Time to soon enough. We're gonna start calling it a losing streak here, man. We're gonna gotta keep giving you heck for it. But no, Ryan, appreciate the time as always, buddy. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
All right. So with that, Taylor and myself, we got a commercial break. After the break, we'll probably have some good stuff to ask Mr. Mike Doty, team owner, longtime industry member. He's been around long in those eras before me and Ryan. So if we pick up from the tire stuff, it'd be cool to hear his thoughts. But more than anything, we're going to talk karting in the Northeast with the guy that's really helped champion the NorthEast Karting Challenge, and Keith Raffa as well. So we're going to take this commercial break. When we do come back, stay tuned. We got some more coming our way. Kart Store USA is a kart parts supplier that racers and retailers can count on when they need reliable advice and service. We focus on servicing all racers with honesty and pride while maintaining customer satisfaction. We carry a full stock of Kart Republic and Tony Kart chassis, as well as IAMI and Vortex Rock engines. We've also got a host of other parts available and in stock, such as products from Rev Performance Materials, Jecco Racing Seats, and more. We have a 100% satisfaction guarantee, And on top of that, if your order exceeds $200, shipping is on us. Check out all we have to offer today by visiting us online at kartstore-usa.com. Don't settle for a national engine builder. Take care of yourself with an international one. SRP Engines is a global industry leader in engine services, specializing in engine formulas such as KZ, OK, OKJ, and Mini 60. SRP Engines is the engine of choice for Magic Kart USA and helped power North America's #1 ranked pro shifter driver AJ Myers to the 2021 SuperKarts USA Pro Tour National Championship. SRP Engines can also service any spec engine class of your choice, including IAME and ROC divisions. However, if you're looking for the absolute choice when it comes to KZ shifter engines, there is nobody better. For more information, contact Amar Sanada at srp-engines.com. KC Happy Hour is proudly presented by the Rock Sonoma Karting Championship, presented by Cameron Race Promotions, the most competitive Northern California karting series. Featuring a 2-day format with practice on Saturday and racing on Sunday, multiple track configurations, and a massive prize structure including tickets to Rock Vegas, race car test opportunities, and race rewards. Rock Sonoma is the training ground of multiple national karting champions each year and race car champions as well. Featuring a full Rock Cup USA class structure with each race weekend streamed live via YouTube, it's a series you cannot miss. For more info, check us out online at zanzarukarting.com. All right, everybody, welcome back here to KC Happy Hour. I have Taylor Burris here with me, but now we're going to open our show up to a little bit more. Let's go ahead and we'll bring in Mr. Mike Doty. Mike, thanks again, as always, for coming back on the show.
How you guys doing today?
Doing all right. We're doing all right. Let's bring over another Northeasterner for his first time on the show, Keith Raffa. Keith, are you nervous? Are you good? How are you doing?
Hey, I can't be nervous with Mike Doty here. That's all that matters.
So, first to Keith, on to you, man. You guys did it. First Northeast Karting Challenge event in the books. What was your feeling Sunday night or Saturday night once the podiums got done? Did you get calls the next week? I mean, that's the first time kind of going through the experience, being obviously it's a board project between you, Mike, Team Ferris, and a bunch of other shops, John Bonanno's shop, and a bunch more, everyone in the Northeast coming together. But, you know, you've been my point of contact with it. I imagine you've been championing a lot of that campaign. So what's that whole experience been like to come to fruition with Race 1?
Well, it went way better than I thought. Unfortunately, we had a little bit of rain on the Saturday, and there was still a reasonable amount of people that came out. But on Sunday, we had 75 people that came out and actually raced, and Mike wasn't even able to make it there because he was still in Florida. So I can't imagine what our next race is going to be if the weather's looking good. And,
yeah, that's a good point, Mike. I mean, you guys, between you and Brandon, what you have set up has you kind of able to do sometimes that I'd imagine, 2 tents, 2 locations. But, I mean, damn, man, I feel like you've been probably almost as busy, if not more busy than we have been.
Oh, for sure. When there's no off season. I mean, we've been down in Orlando for so long. Then we have to stop up in Mooresville and do some racing up there. But now we got some more trucks and trailers and tents, so now we can split up a little bit and might make it a little bit easier for us.
And before we get too far removed from that conversation with Ryan, I know you guys were in the green room a little bit, but Mike, especially being at Orlando as well and being around seeing the sport for so long, like, can you kind of echo or maybe go back and forth on what he was saying, like seeing that we're just seeing the tracks go a completely different way than where they have for the last probably decade or so of national racing with rubbers and the compounds?
Yeah, it seems like a lot. I mean, the tires that we use they don't seem like they're laying down rubber. They'll lay down for like a half a day, and then all of a sudden the track will get greasy. I thought the funny thing was when we did USBKS. And we had Christian Miles with us, and he was pretty fast, won a lot of classes. We had some guys under our tent for the SCUSA. Their experience level was a little bit lower, but they came right out of the box 6/10 faster than Christian went the whole week before. So I'm kind of scratching my head a little bit. Then I see our cadet kids going around, and they're coming in with like an inch of rubber on their tires. That's kind of weird. And then I forgot that they had the rock race the week before. So those tires lay down like a lot of rubber compared to what the MGs lay. So, but it's way different than it used to be. When back in the day when we raced, there'd be so much rubber on the track that in some instances they'd bring in the fire department and they would spray the track with the hoses to get the rubber off because we couldn't get the kids over the scale line. Just because the tires were just made a little bit different back then.
Yeah. So, I mean, how much is a challenge, has it been on the setup side and then again coaching the drivers, I mean, you're on the fence line watching them. You have Brandon, yourself, and a big team under the tent. I mean, are you almost changing some of the stuff that you preach to them a little bit? Are you saying, hey, don't, whereas maybe a couple of years ago, hey, you're going to need to drive this a little bit different as the weekend goes on. Whereas now you're saying keep driving how you are, or anticipate a different kind of track. Like, how much is that like coaching process almost changed?
Oh, when we're doing a track walk, there's two different lines, right? So when we're walking it, when we first get there, this is where you want to be. By Friday, middle of the day, when everybody's throwing new tires on and the track starts getting slick, this is the line you have to drive. You're not looking to get back onto the power early. You're looking to use a little bit less brake, let the car roll in the turn, let the car do the work, let the front end get pointed, and then get back on the gas again. And then we just know that when the track's going to get greasy, it's like, oh, 1 o'clock. Okay, we got to change the setup just a little bit. We got to start changing our driving style. Might have to go up a tooth. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff involved from the beginning of the week to the end of the week because things are changing. And we're constantly telling the drivers, hey, it's going to get slick out there. It's going to get slick. And somebody will come in. There's always one person under the tent. It's slick out there. It's like an ice skating ring. Yeah, we told you that on Friday that it was going to get like that. So.
And to both of you guys here, what's been over the off season, right? We had the announcement for the NorthEast Karting Challenge. We put it out on here, did the press releases through EKN. You start the social media, get the buzz going. Like you said, you end up with 75 on the day where you don't get bombarded with rain during the time of the year when a lot of snowbirds are down in Florida for all the different national races. Now the season's spread out, at least on the traveling series side, a little bit. Compared to how the start of this year felt like it was probably the most amount of big races from January to March I think we've seen in a while. But what's it been like? Have you felt like a return of energy or resurgence or higher amount of energy of guys getting behind this series with it forming up?
Oh, for sure. There was so much unhappiness with everything over the last couple of years that people just stopped coming. So just getting the word out and getting everybody to come back is, the biggest challenge. And unfortunately, over the last couple of years, we have different people that pick different engines to run. And, so combining all the engines and making sure everybody's happy. And, we have one thing that we decided was that, like, if you're running a Rotax, well, you can't be last. We're going to have Rotax scored separately than the IAMEs because, sometimes the IAME motor's faster. So, we don't want the Rotax guy not to come. He could still run for a win and still compete with everybody. But, everybody's welcome. Just come out, ride, have a good time.
And Mike, I mean, you've been up in that region. I think back to when I talked with, with Brandon about, his upbringing starting over at like Englishtown and a Comer Cadet Field of 20, 30 guys, regionally. There was, not too long ago where it was really healthy. It's been healthy at OVRP. It seems like it's kind of weathered the storm because that track and that area is a little more isolated. It's still close to New York City. So you think recession, obviously they have a higher income to start with. So the disposable income for karting percentage of their budgets, maybe, not as big out of a lower income area. But, what was the magic of that, maybe 2000s, it seems like, or 90s in the Northeast, and then 2010s. And then even the last couple of years, just kind of almost losing it a little bit. And what was lost? What do we need to get back? Is this, I'd imagine this is the start, of trying to get the whole region healthy and all the clubs up there.
Well, we definitely have a lot of karters in this area. And I would think the earlier 2000s, the biggest thing was we didn't have many options. There wasn't many tires to pick from. There wasn't many different series to pick from, engine packages. So it was way more simple. And then it started not to get simple. Everyone's like running, every track's pushing a different engine package, a different tire. People are getting confused. They're getting pulled in 100 different directions. Heck, when people call me, I wouldn't know what to tell them. Where are you going to race? Oh, you race here? Well, then that's what you got to get, that engine package. You got to get this tires. You got to go with that guy. And now it's kind of, we're trying to get it just a little bit more simple. Like, we don't care what engine you run. Bring whatever engine. There's so many engines in this area and there's so many racers. Bring whatever you want. We're going to try to make it as equal as possible so everybody has a good time in the race. And like you said about the recession thing, I mean, this area has always been good with the Connecticut, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. We're just lucky to be in this area. But we have a lot of karters, so there's no reason that when we're going to the track, there shouldn't be 140 to almost 150 entries because there's that many karters in this area.
I know I've got some more, but I know Taylor's got some questions for you both here. Taylor?
Well, let's go back a little bit to more of that about the recession, but also the growth of the karting in the Northeast area. You know, we see that being done even more and more. What are some of the big key points that helps bring and keeps building upon the karting community in that Northeast? I mean, we see some of these tracks, but are there other different aspects that just keeps the numbers up at that area?
Keith, you can take that one first, and then Mike.
I don't know. I think first of all, Tim Hannon with OVRP is the only track that's open all the time for racing. So we need to make sure, and Tim's been a big supporter, that we talk with him and we do the same things he's doing, because this is what he does for a living and he's open all the time. Like, we're real lucky to have New Jersey Motorsports Park and also Raceway Park that we can have races at, but they don't focus on racing all the time. They're not open 7 days a week. So people buy stuff. They want to go to Oakland Valley, but we also want them to come to New Jersey also. So, like, we are joining with Tim and having races at Tim's track because he's a very important part of the Northeast. So, like, in New York, like, if you're going to go racing in New York, the only track to really go to is OVRP. Other than that, like, you know, you may as well just come to one of our races in New Jersey. So, you know, I don't know what else to do. Like, Tim runs everything, so we're going to run everything. You know, Tim makes it very friendly.
Yeah, I mean, Tim's a Carter, you know, through and through, right? I mean, it has always been, still races today. New Jersey Motorsports Park, like a lot of the bigger facilities where there's a karting track on site at a car track, you have non-karting people sometimes coming into management positions there. So both, I mean, you've had a relationship with that track for the last however many years, at least the last couple,
Since they
especially.
opened, we've been going there, but like, I never really tried to rent or do anything until last year when, you know, the unfortunate demise of the other series that we had to step up and try and do something.
So what's that been like with them? Has been going through even just the last 12 months? Have you been able to, I mean, how did they
they've been really friendly, really easy. Please give us stuff to promote and, you know, put out there. That, you know, they don't want karting to go away, and they just want things to work out well. So, you know, hopefully we don't have any lightning, but other than that, we should be fine as long as there's no lightning.
And for either of you guys, I saw over the weekend that, you know, Englishtown on the drag strip, right? That was a big talking point through last year. They weren't sure if the drag strip and the whole property was going to get sold. The kart track was in the parking lot of the drag strip for the club stuff at Englishtown. They had the rental carts going, and they've got what looks to be like rental carts going there a handful of times this year. So what's the status on Englishtown? Obviously, you're racing there. What's that?
Well, Englishtown, and Mike, I think, will agree with me, is an amazing track if you want to learn how to actually drive. There's passing in every turn. It's not a track where, you know, you can easily run a defensive line and be protective and block, basically. So you can run at Englishtown, and if you can run good there, you can run good anywhere. It's in a parking lot next to the drag strip that is now shut down, but the drag strip was shut down, and they're using some of the property for other things, but the place is going to be open all this year, and it looks like, you know, possibly 3 more years. You know, there's a deal in the works, but it's nothing official yet.
Gotcha. So beyond, you know, the simplicity of trying to at least give people less options to run, are there other things in mind you can think of, Mike, to kind of keep fanning the flames of growth up there between all the different clubs as well, too, from what you've seen over the years?
Well, I think the biggest thing in our region is that for everybody gets along. Tim gets along, Keith, Raffa, me, Ferris, Bonanno. Like, if somebody calls me and they're from Pennsylvania and they're like, hey, we want to come up there and start, I'm like, I'm not your guy. You call Keith Raffa, he's going to be closer to you. He'll take care of your equipment. If somebody new calls me, and I mean like a real newbie, and they said, hey, I'm close to Oakland Valley, I want to get a cart, I'm not your guy. Call Tim Hannon. I'll give you his cell phone number. Tell him I told you to call. He'll sell you a cart. He'll give you a lesson. If you're in it in a year later and you still want to go to bigger races and you're serious about it, then call me. And it's like that with all of us. Like, if Raffa doesn't go to the big races, he'll tell his customers, here, go with Mike. He'll bring your stuff. He'll bring it to the races. Like, Ferris will bring his equipment to places. We'll bring his equipment. Everybody just gets along, and it just seems like that really helps out. And I think that's why we're growing so much.
So growth for the series stuff is there anything specifically you can think back on, Keith, some big lessons from that very first race weekend getting underway?
Well, I mean, first of all, hope for better weather. But as far as running the race, like we had a few things to polish up, but I don't think it'll be much of a very big issue. It was nice the podium started right after the racing was done. The one thing I did want to say is that when we started this, it was a group of all of us that had small businesses like this, and we needed a place to do business. Like when New Jersey Motorsports Park shut down the racing, like we needed to get together and we needed to have a place to do business. And we all need to get along. It's not like who's the most dominant person, who's better than that. Like it doesn't matter. Like we all have to work with each other because we can't handle everybody ourselves. Like we had 150 people. One person can't handle 150 people. I don't care who you are. Like if everybody could have 25 customers that are involved in this, I think everyone would be happy. You know what I mean? So, but other than that, this next race coming up, I think we're going to go the same course and polish up a couple things and make sure that we start on time and finish on time.
That's always a big key point. At least at least with the schedule, right? It's your own schedule, so you can rig it a little bit. You can go back and look at the times of the races, and make sure that you set out the gaps. It's your own goalposts that you set, right? That you manage, and it's just sticking to that. That's the thing. It's not like you have to work hard off what someone else says when you need to get done by or need to run this session in that time. For sure. Was there anything when you went into getting everyone together for you yourself, right? We talked about it over the phone. You're like, man, I'm not running a race series before. I'm just running my small shop. I'm an electrician. I do this, I do that. Yeah. What was, do you feel, I don't know, like stuff you didn't expect, stuff you did expect from the experience, right, of being, one of the point guys on a race weekend from the promoter side, like seeing that and experiencing that firsthand for the first time?
Well, first of all, I have to say thanks to Eric Jones, with MG Tires, like he's the main sponsor of the series, and he really stepped up and was really big and huge to get it all going. But, I called the Alliance, the NorthEast Karting Alliance, of course, with Mike, and then it was Adam Pettit, Jerry White, John Ferris III, and the big person that's helped me the most is John Bonanno, and then myself. And, with all these people, like I would just throw out an idea and people would say what they really thought. And we all just come to a decision together. And it wasn't one person just saying, this is what it's going to be. And if you don't like it, beat it. So, we tried our best to make that happen. But without Eric making it to where we can afford the track, that's, we would never even, I wouldn't even attempted it.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Mike, obviously you've had a relationship with Eric for decades long. You both seem like you're in, at the same mindset as what a lot of, the good guys in the sport have been, that it's like, we just do what we can to help each other out to get people on the racetrack and keep that, going, and then as you scale the series up, you got to manage with tech and race directors as it grows. There's new problems that come up as you solve them, but it's not rocket science, to putting on an event, right? It's not rocket science to getting everyone together. I can imagine you've seen it probably plenty of times to the fence line. You're scratching your head like it's not that hard, guys. Like if we put our egos in check, we can do good races. We can put on good races. We can all get along, and everyone can, make it, and keep going, right?
No, I agree. I mean, anytime I think you run a series and it's the beginning, you're not going to make everybody happy, right? This is the rule of thumb. That's why I told Keith when he did this. I said, you're not going to make everyone happy. Somebody's going to complain about something. Even if you gave a free entry fee and didn't charge anybody to race, they're going to find something to complain about. But I think you got to make the majority of the people happy and do the best you can. Keith is a racer. He's been around for a long time. His son raced, so he knows what he's doing. But I'm sure things come up that he's just not accustomed to, or anybody, like if you run a series that just comes up at the spur of the moment and you're like, oh man, and things are moving really fast as the weekend goes. But he'll do a good job. He's been working hard at it, so he'll be fine.
Yeah. Is there anything like that you're willing to share, Keith, or you want to keep a little more of your cards to yourself of stuff like,
I think the most important part is to surround yourself with really good people. And, like I'm not the most intelligent person, but if I surround myself with smart people and listen to them and, take everything that everyone says and come up with the best plan with everybody, like that's all you have to do. You just have to have common sense, and common sense will prevail. I know our next race, we already have like Max Taylor. he just recently won a race, at SCUSA. He's going to come back and race. My son's going to come out of retirement and race. So, Lucas Sabo, I mean, he kicked everyone's butt the last time. So, I think it's going to be a really good race. I don't know how many other people are thinking about dusting off their go-karts and coming out.
And I'm sure, it makes it a lot easier for both of you guys, right? I mean, when you have that solid kind of intermediate traveling series when a driver goes to a track for the first time, but it's not to a USPKS level, it's not to a SCUSA level, you can both slow the shock almost progression down, I guess, of going just from, all right, we were racing at OVRP Club, we drive this track all the time, I know what to expect, and now that I'm going straight to a national, now you have this good intermediate deal that both helps grow the clubs. It's what we're set for 8 or 9 weekends this year, right, Keith? Am I mistaken on that? What's that
there's
total?
overall 10 races. There's
10
4
races?
at New Jersey Motorsports Park, 4 at Englishtown, New Jersey, and then 2 at Oakland Valley, which are Saturday night races, which I'm really looking forward to. They're in the summer, so it'll be nice and cool up there in New York instead of being on the Jersey Shore where it's way too hot.
Yeah. And Mike too, right? It's got to be easy for you when you've got, guys that are calling you, right? They're getting in. Now you've got 3 tiers on the system, as it should be, right? Your local track, a small traveling series, and then it's time to go to the big shows, yeah?
Yeah, for sure. That's how we used to use when we used to have a series here. We would take the people wanted to go right to the big races, and we're like, that might be a little bit too intimidating. Let's start off with our local series because we'll have a couple of national level guys there. And then when you have a couple of national level guys, there's not 30 kart fields. I mean, we hope that it would be that way, but when they go to the big races, they can never get close to those guys. So when we run at a regional race, if there's a national level guy, they can get close to them. They'll be within a row or the row behind them, and they can learn a lot. And I said, we'll gauge yourself off that. We can run with them, and we'll see if we're ready, and then we can start bringing you to, bigger races and different types of tracks. So definitely what we need around here, for sure.
Well, it's
I think the most
go ahead, Keith.
I think the most important part is we're just club racing, but we're going to do it really serious. We're going to have really good tech and make sure that some of the dads aren't getting, a little crazy and doing things that they shouldn't be doing. And, it's club racing. And then if you do really well, then if you go to a national, hopefully you don't get your butt kicked at. You can actually make the race and compete.
Yeah, make it a good stepping stone. So, to put a bit as we get towards the end of this segment, and I appreciate the time for both of you guys. Mike, have you been able to take a day to yourself at all here with getting out of Orlando before you get into everything else? You said you had to go to GoPro to race it over there. What's the last couple of weeks been like for you?
We did 2 or 3 shop days trying to get people's carts ready that we kind of neglected a little bit because they weren't with us and our season was starting up here. And we just been at the track every day. So this whole week so far, I've been at the track every day. I was at the track today. I'll be back at the track tomorrow. And then I just don't have enough time. Someone, is my cart ready? No, it's not ready. Well, is it ready tomorrow? Yeah, no, it's not going to be ready tomorrow. Because you got to either put pedal kits on. We got to do stuff or order special parts. So it's just really, really busy. And then, everybody wants to hit the track. And it's been 80 here this week. So the weather just broke. And it's been 70, and now it's in the 80s. So everybody's calling. People I didn't think I'd hear from are calling. Hey, we're ready. So I'm like, yeah, you're ready, but I'm not ready. So it's been busy. So that's all I can say, which is good. So I can't complain. So that's what I've been up to, trying to catch up on work.
I can only imagine. Keith, what about you? What's been the aftermath of the first race? Your son, everything else, and then getting ready for the next race. What's the last few weeks been?
I don't know. It's just been going. Just like Mike said, we have a race next weekend, and then the weekend after that, I don't know if I can catch up, but then we're going to GoPro for the Stars race. Joe Janowski's actually our insurance guy for this. He's been a big help, giving us ideas and things to do. So it just never stops. It's I actually am going to be off this weekend. I'm like, oh, thank God I'm going to be off this weekend.
Well, for more info for both of you guys, a little shameless plug before we get out of it. Mike, what's the best way to reach out to you if they want to go racing with you some way or another?
Just send me an email at MikeDotyRacing.com or call me at 845-551-0572 or get a hold of Brandon Jarscrack too as well. So we do everything together. And people want to race a GoPro, here's his number, give him a call, go rip some laps, and then or vice versa. When someone calls him, he sends them my way. So.
And Keith, for yourself, both with Full Tilt Racing for your shop and team, as well as for the NorthEast Karting Challenge, how can they learn a little more and get into it?
It's real easy. Just my name, Keith Raffa @gmail.com. Phone number is 215-651-6733. Willing to talk to anybody about go-karting. And the most important thing is you have a go-kart somewhere in the Northeast, Maryland, Delaware, Washington, D.C., New York, Connecticut, whatever. Come to New Jersey, come to New York at our races. Everybody's welcome. We have a place for everybody. If you're a beginner, we have a novice class. We make sure that everybody's welcome. No one's too big to have new people there. Like, we need a place for people to begin so that we can still have the national level big, so people can't buy a go-kart and go to the nationals. It's not a really good idea.
No, not the best. Well, you've got at least some more guys here. This is from viewer Christopher Hatch saying they're making the 7-hour drive from Vermont to come race with you guys here in 2 weeks. So that's pretty cool. Hopefully you get some good entries going. Obviously, we're going to be there streaming that race in September over at New Jersey, running the full track. So we'll have Kart Chaser live at that event for one of our regional showcases, which will be cool. We're excited to get up there. But for both of you guys, I want to say thanks really quickly again for the time. I know you're busy, but I really do appreciate both of you coming on. It's always good catching up.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Taylor. Thanks, Xander.
Yeah, of
See
course.
you in a couple of weeks. Everyone be good.
Yeah, absolutely. So with them, we got one more commercial break. We got a little more. That was a lot to take in over the last 2 segments, Taylor.
It certainly was a lot of great information, and it's great to hear a lot of things going on with the Northeast.
Yeah. I mean, that's cool. The bottom line out of all of it, again, everybody's understanding and working together. We've seen a lot of really good series start in that way, where it's shop owners, team owners, and then tracks saying, look, we need to do business and we need to all come together and put, again, egos in check, pride in check, and just, find a way to get it. And so, you hear it from Keith, right? This isn't a super tier 200 regional event. This isn't overly standardized. This is show up, bring what you got. We'll find a place. We'll get you on the racetrack and keep forming it the way out. A lot like club racing as it should be. And the cool part that they've got is they've got so much national expertise, not just Mike, not just Keith, but all the other shops there are all guys that we see at the big races that know, okay, this is a little bit more relaxed level, and this is what you need to kind of, guide your way through the sport. And you've got a lot of good people up there.
And that's what I love what Keith brought out is making this series and this organization up there in the Northeast simple. That way everyone can go out there, have a great time, and race and be competitive and have the opportunity to race at some very well reputable tracks in order to, have a good time for each weekend.
Well, we've got viewer Q&A here in our final segment and a couple other things. Of course, we want to give some love to all the races coming up this weekend. There is a ton of different races, it seems like, this week, as everything around the country, like they said, up in New York, up in New Jersey, up in Pennsylvania, breaking 80 degrees this week. It's about that time the Canadian guys get going as well. They got a CKNA Canada race coming up in a few weeks. So there's a lot of racing just getting going. Across the board, we want to give those guys some love and answer all your guys' questions. A lot of them got sent in on our Instagram earlier and DM to us, so we'll have those here right after the break. Ready to go racing along the Gulf Coast? Karting the Coast is a family-oriented regional series that covers Mississippi and Louisiana. Its 2023 schedule consists of 10 races spread amongst Finish Line Performance Karting in Biloxi, Mississippi, and NOLA Motorsports Park in New Orleans. To find out more, visit coastalkarting.com. From 4-stroke to 100cc to 125cc and beyond, Technokart USA has a winning option for you. Based out of Des Plaines, Illinois, Technokart USA offers both chassis designed to win in all divisions of North American karting and a top-level race support program at the U.S. Pro Kart Series, Route 66 Sprint Series, select Cup Karts North America races, and both the Rock Vegas and SCUSA Super Nationals. Podiums, wins, and championships are waiting for you whenever you're ready to get on a Technokart. For more information, follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/TechnokartUSA. All right, everybody, welcome back here to the show. Let's go ahead. We'll dive right into Q&A. Taylor, I know you got the list queued up, so what do we got for us tonight here to kick things off here for viewer Q&A that we've had submitted so far?
Let me see if I can pull up that sheet right quick.
You lost it on me already,
I lost
man.
it already.
What are you doing?
I have a whole lot of notes was trying to get lined up and everything like that, so give me 1 second. Meanwhile, while I'm looking up that, one of the points that we were looking at talking about was about SCUSA making those changes for the 175. So let's touch a little bit on that right quick, and you get your thoughts on the importance of making that change over in order for us to have some better racing.
Yeah, that was one of the submissions I got off the Instagram was SCUSA must change the 175 or it'll kill Pro Shifter. On the same point on the Race Remix, one of the first comments that got thrown in on our YouTube channel was, let me see if I can read this one. Second and third place on Sunday afternoon, miss on jetting on the KZ. All of a sudden, the 175 must be banned. Knee-jerk reaction, if you ask me. Yeah, I mean, it's unfair to judge an engine on BOP off of one race weekend. Now, granted, Billy was on KZ's last year. Nobody else was fast in the pro class on a 175. I think he went to 175s at Vegas. They had some fuel issues. A lot of guys at all the SCUSA races were kind of struggling with the Aspen fuel. So everyone went to work over the winter, tried to get faster. The competition was really good when we got out of the gates in Orlando at both events. The Italkart guys coming over, with Remo Ruschetti, who's a superstar talent. GFC was there the week before with the Rock race doing some testing as well with Kyle Wick and Jacob Gulick. We hadn't seen them on the East Coast to start the year either till the SCUSA race. So everyone finally comes together for the first race, and it's no different than the sports car world. Now, BOP, balance of power between multiple different engines. I mean, you heard it there from Keith of, what they opted to do in the Northeast was split the classes. That's a regional and a club style mindset that you have for those kinds of series where, everyone can get a trophy. It's okay if you're on track with 10 guys and 3 of them have one engine and they're all automatically podiumed and the other 7 are on another, because normally the talent spread is so wide and from a beginner to maybe 1 or 2 national level guys in a field that everyone spreads out anyway. So even if someone's got more straightaway speed than you, or you've got more speed out of the corner, they've got more at the top end, like it's not that big of a deal. You're kind of playing with each other. When we're racing at the level that we are with the national stuff, I mean, you're talking everyone's in 5 or 10 grand, either out of their own pocket, out of a manufacturer's pocket, and not to mention all the weekends of testing, both at the racetrack for the guys that test the week before, but all the winter testing and training that everybody does. I mean, everyone's training like pro athletes nowadays to run Pro Shifter, and you see a lot more guys in the X30 class doing the same. So, there's more pressure to keep it even. I don't remember how much I went into it on last week's show because Billy was really, really cool to go in depth about his program specifically, but the idea of the 175, and I think we answered a little bit on Q&A, is it's supposed to be that economical, shifter engine that was the same type of formula that the stock Honda CR125 carried shifter kart racing in America for 20 years. I know that for SCUSA, they don't want to let go of that because as much as KZ's great for the guys at the very top, Danny Formal can get, and RPG can get support and engines from Vortex. PSL can get support from the TM factory, but 10th on back, those guys are all fully on their own, budget wise, sponsorship wise, etc. So it's what we've talked about with like the OKN stuff too. You've got multiple engine manufacturers. In theory, if that class balloons like it could, you could see an engine manufacturer wanting to get market share or wanting to get their brand up front, and they'll take a guy off of the dominant brand that's a top 5, top 10 guy and give him stuff, and he goes. Whereas in a spec class, you don't have that. But the downside is that, the lead guy, me and you, we can't go, we can't go get in theory, probably. I don't want to say this for sure, and I want to put those guys down, but we can't go and buy a Vortex engine and expect it to be Danny Formal level. We can't go buy a TM engine and expect it to be Pedro Hiltbrand level at Supernats. There's that with every engine builder in the spec classes too. Everyone kind of understands there's a pecking order, and you got to kind of stick with an engine builder, and then over time you get, as people leave that engine builder, if his stuff slows down, or if people move on from karting, you go from being the number 3 guy to the number 2 guy, then to the number 1 guy with an engine builder. So that kind of alliances is already there, but you're going to see more disparity than you will see parity within the end with from the very top guys to the midfield guys. Whereas in a spec class, you see it closer, but it's tougher for the top end guys because there's nothing they can do to separate, and there's nothing they can do to get more funding. So SCUSA wants to, keep it around. They don't want to have that motor go away and go fully KZ. For USPKS, it's a non-issue because they didn't have any, and they had good entries. If the entries drop off and they don't get anyone, but then the top level guys aren't going to run because they're running because there's other go-karts in the class and they want to sell the other go-karts in the class and then go-karts down at the lower levels. Well, if no one can run KZ locally, regionally, and no one wants to race it nationally, then there's no reason for those guys to be in those classes. It's a tough line to draw, but it's also a little bit unfair to go off one race weekend. If you go to Utah and it's fair, it's fair. The issue is it's not like these guys are, making money, so they're just mad that they're not making as much, right? They're all in 5 or 10,000, or the team's more, and all the prep time. So, like for a team to drive from the East Coast or even from California to Utah, it's like if I'm going to go in all this way, I want to know that I have a fighting shot. That's what everybody in the sport wants. Is the money aside, that's not the big issue. If you're committed to running a big race and a competitive race, you just want to be having a fair shake. The perception is that there isn't a fair shake right now off of that first race weekend and off of how good Billy did. It's unfair to Billy because he's also done a lot of chassis development. He's tuned the engine. It's not maybe just because he was on that power plant, but he also had, figured out the power plant too. So there's nothing that really we could have expected out of SCUSA last week. It's a California-based group. They're driving all their trucks home Monday through to Friday. So for anyone to expect an instant announcement is a little bit unfair to them. Whereas USPKS and Stars, those guys were home. So, they can have a meeting on Monday because everyone's home. Everyone's relaxed. Everyone's had days off. They might have watched the stream. They might have heard phone calls, and then they can get to work. SCUSA had travel days. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, the industry leads it. So I'm listing out kind of everything I can think of, but for sure, the majority mob mentality is, all right, this is bad, get away from it. And I think where SCUSA is a little hesitant to lean fully into that is if we go a year, 2 years down the line and we're like, this was the wrong decision, we should have tried to keep a spec option that's competitive against the KZs in the class for everyone else that doesn't want to spend the money to run KZ or doesn't feel like they can get a good KZ. It's too late. So there's a lot to balance beyond the initial wave. And I was even hesitant about talking about it on the show last week. It was cool to have Billy on and to go in depth about everything he did. But in the full debate of where the parity lies, we don't know. We don't know until Utah happens. But if the Utah entries don't show up, then SCUSA's hand will be forced to do something by Newcastle, even if Utah, the few guys that do run, are even. If they have 6 go-karts and it's because everybody wants that engine gone or that engine detuned, then eventually it'll have to be like, all right, fine, we'll do it, But I think they want to say, hey, let's cooler heads prevail, let's cool off and then go. It's out of my realm. Never raced shifter. I've tested shifter a few times. I only know what everybody says, and it's tricky. It's very tricky, but I understand why they haven't said anything yet just off the time span from last week. And I also understand why they want to have that option in the class still moving forward, because it's $4,500 for a motor ready to go that, should be just as good as Billy's. And because it's a 175 detuned, the longevity should be a lot better than a KZ. So for your local guy, for your regional guy, where shifter racing is all but absent compared to 20 years ago when it was rampant, they want to have some option, and there isn't a good option out there. What the solution is, I don't know what the right solution is. The market's going to demand that one way or another. We're going to end up with different problems. It's never going to be perfect, but that's why they haven't done anything yet. I think it's not been enough time. I'm sure they would like to have another race. If they get another race with good entries, then they can balance it. And if we go to Utah and Billy puts another whooping on them both days, speed-wise, fair play. All right, let's get it balanced for Newcastle. 2 different types of racetracks.
Yeah, I see in some of our chats, a couple of people are saying it's just based on how the track favors those certain engine mods as well. So, like you said, time will tell when we head over to Utah in June, and then of course, if we see another, in a sense, runaway with Billy, it's going to be probably a change where we'll see SCUSA have to step in and be like, hey, we got to figure something out to where it is a more balanced race for that going into the season finale at Newcastle.
Well, it's just why BOP is impossible to work on a touring series. It always has been. It's never been good. The tag stuff was never tag when we ran X30s against Rock GPs, against Leopards, against PRD Fireballs and everything. That was supposed to be a clubman class. It was the American kind of FU to Europe saying, you guys are making all of these different engines however you want. We're not going to buy just one. We're going to run them all, and we're going to balance by weight. And that's fine at your local club because it's the same track in terms of how many low-speed corners, how many long straightaways it has, how many mid-range sections it has. You can balance by weight, and you can stick at those weights, and you can stick at those specs, restrictors, whatever, for a full season. And it's impossible to do at the national stage perfectly. And Orlando was a way different racetrack than Rock TT. You're right, Barry. In our chat, Rock TT, not the Rock GP. The Rock TT was crazy top end. That motor had to be like 20 pounds over the average minimum weight to where it got BOP'd. But Orlando was a totally different racetrack with the tightest hairpin we've ever seen at any big race. Always has been. It's not like they've changed that hairpin in the last year. That's how that track is. That is a very different racetrack than Utah. Utah is not Newcastle, but it's really close. Long front stretch, flowing corners. They're not probably going to touch first gear at all there. And they were touching it at Orlando, and they touch it at Supernats, and they won't touch first gear at Newcastle either.
It certainly will have to see how that will play out when we head to the next round of SCUSA. But another point also that we want to touch on, and this is kind of a little bit early on, I have to say, Xander, of what this topic is all about, but predicting the top 5 in the Stars night fight with the OKNs.
So I mean,
it is. I don't even think an entry list has even been released yet. So
Stars doesn't. USPKS puts their entry list public. Rock, SCUSA do not. Stars does not. Most series don't. Club series have started to. Stars have been given entry updates. They're in the double digits, so they're in the early teens on the OKN stuff. Out of big name guys running it, I know Alex Stanfield, to me, is a big favorite of all the biggest names that I've seen declare that they're going to run the race there. I don't know who else. I think maybe, I don't know. I'd imagine maybe Massimino runs. Paulie does, being his home track. I don't know if Hayden Jones does, because with Kart Republic, that's an IAME link, and IAME doesn't have an OKN in the States right now. Brandon Carr is going to run with Ryan Perry Motorsport. I know they're going. And I don't know if Aiden Rudolph is running or not. I don't think he is. But I know that at least Stanfield and Brandon Carr, maybe Paulie, maybe some other GoPro locals will be quick. Don't know the list. That list is going to grow. We're still 3 weeks.
Yeah, at least a month away before we even get started with the first day of action on the track.
Yeah, I'm just curious to hear what the feedback, what everybody is. We've heard some of the feedback, mixed reviews over on the West Coast, but the engine's early. The 175 wasn't well received early. The X30 even went through changes. It just kind of got clouded because it was mixed in with the Leopard, and it was at the end of a multi-engine tag formula. So you didn't hear anything with X30. KA was already a well-established engine long before it came to the States. The A stands for Australia, because it was introduced in Australia to replace the Yamaha engine. So KAs were bulletproof by the time they got to us, and they were amazing. But they've also changed a lot since then. We're running 3,000 RPM higher than when I raced it in 2017 in the first year. So this is the first time in a little while we've seen a brand new engine, not counting the 175. That's the most recent one, like brand new to everybody, to the world. And we have been in the US the testing ground because no other races have been run yet with that motor.
Well, Luigi Saraceno makes a good point right here about trying to resolve that issue about making, why not just no modifications, everything stock in the box as it comes in for these teams?
It doesn't. That's what we've been on with the IAMI stuff, the Rock stuff, the Rotax stuff. That was where we went from the end of the ICA ICC era. When we were on, the ICA was what was okay. It went ICA was the name of the formula for 125 open single speed in the 2000s. Then it went to an engine package called the KF, went from direct drive to push to start with an onboard starter, and then KF was replaced by OK, which is now replaced, taken away the onboard starter, is going to go back to bump start, where all the manufacturers can play. That's the international formula. International formula has always been like that. We've been over here on a spec format since the Rotax stuff came in the early 2000s. That's cool. The problem is when those guys can't modify and you get someone that either gets lucky with a really good engine, or what normally is the rumor that happens that kills that same format is that everyone the rich guys will buy a lot of engines and either piece the best pieces together, because nothing is perfect off a factory line. There's slight tolerances, a little bigger, a little smaller. You can make an all-star engine. And that's the whole argument for the KZ stuff. That's the whole argument for the KZ stuff over Rock Shifter, which was the equal comparison where all the top guys were running Rock Shifter versus all the top guys running KZ. I heard Jake French talk about it on the podcast at the end of last year that they're like, nobody had anything for Danny's Rock Shifter. His one Rock Shifter motor was a really, really good motor. Whereas we heard with Gary Carlton, he came on the podcast, he's like, KZ, I don't even label my engines. Like if I blow a piston, I buy a stock piston, I send it to the builder, he's able to work on it, hones it, sends it to me, motor runs the same. So you spend more upfront for one single engine to build it out. Not fully everything, there's limits, versus the doomsday theory of someone buying 30 spec engines, 100 spec engines, spending 5-6 figures to make one supposedly spec motor $3,000. And how do you limit that where you make sure everyone only buys one engine? Well, the only way to do that is the way the Rotax World Finals does it, and that is where you just lease the engines on the race weekend. But it doesn't that's not feasible for any race series. It's not feasible for the engine department. You have engine builders, you're killing a whole arm of the industry. We've been on spec stuff for a while. Now some people on the X30 side didn't feel like there was parity there. They want the OKN. The shifter guys, I don't think it was so much of an issue with parity with the Rock. They just wanted to run what the European guys run. And you've got a lot more the percentage of top level guys to I don't know if I want to say customer drivers, any more casual drivers in shifter is more like a 50-50 split. Whereas in every other class, it's like a 10-20% and then 80% that just buy one engine, buy two engines, just want to go race. So, like we were talking earlier, those guys can get support. But we've been on spec for a while. KZ is not spec. KZ has limits, but they're all built to the same template. And the guys can go get support from different manufacturers. You can get them to play. It's an open market. So it's more, it's just different. But there's no perfect way. You can't just say, oh, everyone can't touch the motor, because I'm going to get a good motor. You're going to get a bad motor. You're going to be mad and there's nothing you can do about it. So you'll still just not show up. That's no different than me being a factory guy and you not being a factory guy and you not getting my engine. There's always going to be that disparity in motorsport. Just kind of pick your poison and what's a little bit closer to fair.
It really is. Well, like you said, it's unfortunate, but we'll see how things go as things progress. But Xander, looking over everything, I think that might be our wrap up for everything going on. And talk a little bit about previewing what we got next week. Of course, we have a couple of special guests joining us for the next episode of Happy Hour. And it's going to be exciting to see how we progress further and further into the season. Of course, our next race will be at the USPKS round in Houston. And a lot of things looking forward to as we draw closer and closer to our next broadcast.
Yeah, a lot of races this week. CKNA Northeast, like I said, they got 100 entries up there. Challenge of the Americas finale over in Sonoma with the Rock Spec stuff and another OKN race.
FIA.
The FIA season gets underway. There's 92 in KZ2. There's 32 or 30.
About 34.
Maybe 34. It's not a full grid of 36 in the KZ Pro class. So that'll be cool to watch. If anyone wants to watch any karting, that'll be live streamed in the mornings, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Maybe just
Southwest
Saturday,
Regional
Sunday.
Cup Series. I think it's Saturday and Sunday.
Southwest Regional Cup over at Speed Sports. That's the closest thing to a race you'll get before USPKS Houston, although I think most of the race teams have preferred the test weekend, so they'll be practicing next week after Southwest Regional Cup instead of going to race. They get more track time. But yeah, a lot of regional racing going around, national level race with Coda over at Sonoma, so big stuff for the West Coast guys. Someone said something about Pad Holder Cup. I think it's a Pad Holder Cup. I don't know if it gets underway this week or in a couple weeks, but that is the Pacific Northwest Sprint Series. And there's some road racing news that came out this week too. Road racing guys are putting up some cash money.
And also going to some very big name locations.
Yeah, they haven't been to well, no, I think they run at Laguna Seca.
They're trying to go back to Laguna Seca.
Trying to go back to Laguna Seca. That's it. That'd be cool. It's a whole different discipline, whole different world. I'm surprised they want to do prize money. I don't feel like that's what that discipline is all about. It's more strictly hobby racers that do karting on road courses. But hey, if it gets entries, if it works out, if the budgets work, maybe it attracts guys to go over there. There's no crossover, very little crossover, but in the 70s and the 80s, everybody ran everything: road race, sprint, asphalt oval, dirt oval. The karts were all the same too. There was no left turn only karts. That's different, but cool.
I mean, you got to think of it this way, Xander. When it comes to this, I mean, some people may not get the chance to maybe go and get a kart race in SCCA competition, and the karting is maybe that only opportunity that they can really go to compete at some of these tracks that we're seeing here, especially with the kart road racing side of it. So it's a great opportunity, I have to say.
But that's it, right? Like, that's it. That's why a lot of those guys like to do that. So that's why the prize money is surprising to me. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I mean, I've been championing it for over here in the top level of the sprint world, just for the senior pro classes. They're going to label their stuff pro. I'm not as familiar. We've got asked to go to some of those races. I'd love to get over to a few more road races. I've seen a few in person, been around a few in person. It just doesn't strike me as that's the way to go. But that's not the only thing they're doing at the event. They're doing like a potluck Saturday night, which is cool. It's just a different community. But like you said, it's guys that just want to drive on the big tracks and like the sensation of speed. So it's again, it falls more to me in the hobby side. That's why I'm curious of what the actual reception would be on those classes. The money, it's not like we're racing for $100,000. It's $1,500 to win the class. So maybe it's a cool little kickback for them. Might spur a few entries. But I don't feel like that's the direction that they need to go. But hey, I'm not an expert in that field. If that's what they feel like people want, go for it.
Well, all I can say is maybe we have to consider reaching out to some of the people over in that side of the community and just get a little more information about the road racing side of the karting community, because it is a fun opportunity. Like you said, it is a hobby class, as you would point out, or a hobby series type for drivers who just want to go out there, race on some of these iconic circuits.
Yeah. Well, that'll wrap our show up tonight, guys. Thanks as always for tuning in to KC Happy Hour. We'll be back next week. Like Taylor mentioned, we'll be having Tim Coyan from the National North American Kart License System, the North American Kart Alliance, between the USPKS Series and the SCUSA Series jumping on board. A lot of you guys had a lot of questions. $150 license fee seemed to ruffle a lot of feathers. What is it going to do? What's the requirements for the senior classes that he's starting to put just base level requirement to keep a brand new guy from buying a pro shifter and showing up to Super Nats, which is good. But it's only in place for the Pro Tour. It's only in place for USPKS. But it's a cross-series penalty point system. What all that looks like, everyone's got a lot of questions about it. We'll have him on the show next week, along with a bunch of other topics and all the news that comes out. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you a week from today.